one of the other parts of the job, I had to edit all the contact sheets and choose which photos go into the magazine of the men. Here's this 17-year-old girl choosing these muscle men. It was just the weirdest thing.
In this job that the government is subsidizing.
Exactly, yeah.
Hello and welcome to Did I Do That? It's a podcast about making graphic design and making mistakes because it's all part of the process. I'm Sean Schumacher, and joining me today, a very special guest. She's an instructor at the Idea School of Design at Capilano University and previously taught at the Vancouver Film School. She's worked in-house at the Hudson's Bay Company and Woodward's department stores, and also in advertising at BBDO and DDB. Also, she's a founding partner and co-creative director of Hangar E18 here in Vancouver, where we are recording today. It's Vida Jurcic. Did I get it right?
Close. Jurcic.
Jurcic. Vida Jurcic. Okay.
Anything close is fine.
Thank you so much for being here and also for bringing me in. You've been like super duper welcoming to me.
Oh, sweet.
We met like 2 nights ago, right?
Yeah.
I reached out to you to see if you wanted to be on the show, and you invited me to just an incredible, the first party I've been to since before the pandemic, even.
I
Not
think
a big
it was
party
the
person.
first for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it was a pirate party. Arr.
It was. And that doesn't, I think, fully convey the amount of build out, actual build out that happened. You built a whole structure around the pool with a mast out of wood. This is
was
not
my
a cardboard thing.
That was my partner, Dean. He's amazing. He loves doing woodwork and gardening, so it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little paradise that we stepped into. But so you're a designer here in Vancouver.
Yes, designer and art director and creative director. I've done it all.
And you're teaching.
And I'm teaching, yeah, and I think that's really important, just giving back. I love teaching. Actually, I'm an alumni. I went there in the 1970s, late 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for 2 years, because it was a 2-year program then, and it didn't have university status. So years later, one of my old instructors invited me to teach.
What was that like to go from student to teacher there?
Well, it was really scary because I've never taught.
Well, that's also the secret of all university teachers is they don't really train you or give you really any information, even basic information like where the bathrooms are.
No, oh, totally, yeah. But I have to say the people that hired me there, they were really welcoming, and I actually enjoyed coming up with ideas for projects, a lot of crazy ideas. I had students going all over the campus back in the early years looking for objects and designing album covers based on the object they found.
My gosh, it's a design scavenger hunt.
Yeah, it was. It was a design scavenger hunt. It was so much fun.
I love that so much. That's really fantastic. And I was also really amazed at the work that comes out of the school.
Oh, cool.
Just some really, really gorgeous stuff. And your students have won a bunch of awards.
They have. I'm very, very proud of my students. I've had over 80 of them win awards over the years, and actually unprecedented first years won awards, and they got into applied arts, and
that's wild.
They've done really, really well. So I'm very proud of them. They're my kids. I never had biological kids of my own, so my students are my kids.
Yeah, you get to really bond with folks in this kind of role. It's such a special thing, and to be able to have that kind of thing going out into the world too is really special. Well, I'm an award-winning designer. I'm not, but they are.
It was great.
I won an award for journalism in high school, so yeah, I did win an award. I did too. Yeah. So
congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you. I think that might actually be the first acknowledgement I've ever gotten for that terrible award. Yeah, they gave me a very weird plaque, I want to say, that was signed, really printed with Bill Clinton's signature on it.
Honestly, it's not as bad as I once won a best costume award when I was a teenager, and I won a giant bag of bananas. So there you go. I'm sure you're
Why would
better.
they do that? What?
It was weird.
Such
it was some Croatian
punishment
dance
prize. Like, oh, I hope you can eat 50 bananas
Yeah,
today because they're
totally.
going to be bad tomorrow.
Yeah, like nice monkey suit. Here are your bananas. Sorry,
Oh my God. All right.
you're making me cry of laughter.
That's
We haven't even gotten into the flubs yet.
no, this is this is beautiful. Oh my God. Yeah. So but oh, now I have to put my brain back on track and remember what the hell I was gonna do. Oh yeah. So we were gonna talk about you went and taught at the program that you came out of.
Mhm.
But what was it like going to school there? Like,
Well, first of all, the campus is absolutely gorgeous. It's set up in the mountains, and
yeah, you're
it's
in North Van.
yeah, in North Vancouver. And back then, there weren't as many houses around, so I just remember during breaks going out and sitting amongst these 100-foot trees and
Oh
writing
my
in my journal. It
gosh.
was just amazing. The air was beautiful, very inspiring. It's still a beautiful campus.
Oh
It's
yeah.
still a gorgeous setting. And I was lucky enough. My first job between first and second year was actually in design.
What
So
was that?
that was, believe it or not, back then they had this program where the government funded half your employment.
Oh,
So
little
I
subsidy. That's
answered, yeah,
nice.
I answered an ad for the International Match Corporation, thinking that, hey, I'll be designing matchbook covers. So I walk in for my interview and I see all these photos on the wall, these posters of bodybuilders. And I thought, oh my God, what the heck is this? It turns out it was a job doing layout design by hand, because back then there were no computers, for Looking Good magazine. That was
So
printed.
a little bit of a front, perhaps.
Totally, yeah. And they were also
Innocuous matchstick company.
exactly. And they were the sponsor of the Mr. North America pageant that was happening in Vancouver. So here I was only like 17 years old because I skipped grade 10. So I graduated at 16. I was working with this old guy. It was just the two of us in the office, and he was putting on this competition. I remember he used to wear these denim suits with giant embroidered peacocks down the legs, like they were flared pants.
Wait, he wore these every day?
He wore these every day to
Oh,
work. It was just
God.
the weirdest thing.
Did he have multiple pairs, or is this just one very stinky
I think
peacock
this
pants?
probably stinky peacock.
Oh.
I have no idea what happened to him, but no, he used to drive me around, and he had this giant black Cadillac, and he took me to the Queen Elizabeth Theater and asked for my advice on how to do the stage for the Mr. North America pageant. So I thought,
Wow.
well, let's put some big Greek columns in there or something, this Adonis thing that,
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah. And then he made me hand letter a giant banner for it. And then he left me at the office the day of the competition, and he said, Arnold's going to be calling you from the airport.
I,
And that is the Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he
oh.
was Mr. Universe at the time.
Oh. Oh.
And he, so
Oh.
all I had to do is tell him that there was a car on its way for him. And sure enough, the phone rang. I was alone in the office, and it was Mr. Schwarzenegger. And I got to
I mean,
speak to him.
he's Mr. Universe, but he's not Mr.
No.
Movie Star.
No, he's not. This
Not
is
Conan the
before-
Barbarian, or
No.
wow.
This was before his movie career. And I just reassured him that he's going to be well taken care of. And that was it. So that was my 5 minutes on the phone with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's oddly enough, years later, I saw him in a coffee shop with his son on Robson Street. I remember I was with my then partner, Sean, whose name was Sean also. And we were having coffee, and he said, hey, look, it's Arnold. And sure enough, Arnold says to his son, keep walking.
Cold.
So I've had
Arnold.
2 brushes with Arnold.
Wow. I mean, I'm sure he must get that all the time.
I'm sure, yeah.
He stands out a bit in a crowd.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
think.
He is as big as he looks on screen.
Is he really? I mean, he
tall.
looks like he's 12 feet tall.
Yeah. No, he's pretty tall. He's well over 6 feet.
And he's at his most muscly at the Mr. Universe time, too.
Yeah,
so
he
he's
was.
he's like as wide muscle-wise as he is tall.
Totally. Yeah, I still remember all the poses that they did, because one of the other parts of the job, I had to edit all the contact sheets and choose which photos go into the magazine of the men. Here's this 17-year-old girl choosing these muscle men. It was just the weirdest thing.
In this job that the government is subsidizing.
Exactly, yeah. Those were the days.
I'm curious what your criteria were for which shots were a go.
Well, actually, my boss, he showed me the typical poses, what they should be doing. And the criteria was how well defined the muscles were.
You're looking for the most sculptural.
Most sculptural, and also the expressions. I didn't want them to look like they're in pain or constipated.
Arnold sneezing.
Exactly. There was another guy who was actually, like, I've had a bit of a crush on. His name was Mike Menser.
Oh.
So he was also in the competition.
Do you remember what his thing was? Like,
no, I just remember he was big.
Just big.
But I honestly, I wasn't attracted to muscle men back then. I liked the skinny goth guys. So it was totally.
So not quite a perfect match.
No, not a perfect match. It was more about having a critical eye.
How long did you stay at the magazine, at the match company?
That was just a summer job.
Oh.
So it was only a few months. By September, it was over.
Had you like really done any? I mean, it sounds like you were mainly kind of doing contact sheet type stuff. Were you doing? Oh, you were doing layouts.
I was doing marker layouts for some of the more important spreads.
Yeah.
And I was coming up with concepts because even at that young age, because I loved advertising from the moment I could walk. And I remember I had to do a spread on vitamins for bodybuilding. So what I did is I thought, hey, it's all about cod liver oil and, that kind of fish derived stuff. So I thought, let's put all the pills in the shape of a fish. So I thought for a 17-year-old girl,
that's pretty clever. Yeah.
At the time, so the magazine lasted, I think, 3 issues, and I only worked on the 1 issue that summer, and that was it.
Short-lived, but well-loved.
Yeah, totally.
I should also say, if you're hearing any sounds, listeners, we're not technically in Hangar 18. We're in a space adjacent to Hangar 18 in a building, which is like on the main tourist drag in Vancouver. Like we're like a block away from the steamy clock, the toot toot clock. It really does toot too, which I didn't anticipate. It's a very delightful discovery. Mm-hmm. It's not just kind of gassy. But yeah, this is the space that we're in is not a recording studio so much as it is a kitchen and pool room and
gym
entry to a gym.
So if you hear heavy gym doors opening, that's what I'm closing.
Yes, if you hear a gentleman coming in to microwave his lunch and listening very loudly to a TV show, that might also be an energy that we're bringing.
At least it's better than our boardroom where the windows are open and you hear people walking down the street screaming the F word. So you don't want that.
Well, we've got a lot of listeners in Portland. They're used to that. Totally. That's just every day. So you're doing this as a summer job. You're doing some layout, and you're going back to school. Like, what was the rest of your school time like?
It was great. Like back then, again, no computers, so a lot of stuff done by hand. We had photography. I had to develop my own film and do all that. So I really got great training, not just in design and typography, but also in creative direction, conceptual thinking. Because all our time and effort was really spent on the idea, on the concept, and on technical skills, like hand skills. Drawing. We had 2 different illustration classes. I got that really good grounding. Like when computers came about in the 80s, I was self-taught.
Really?
Now I'm teaching my students how to do things, but I actually the first course I took was at the local elementary school. It was called Mac for the Completely Terrified. I didn't even know how to turn one on. So I took this course just to know how to turn the thing on because I didn't want to be embarrassed at work.
When about was this?
Would have been in the 80s.
Wow. So early days.
Early days, yeah. And back then, the programs were different. Like my first Mac was a Mac Classic.
Oh, yeah. One of the classic, square
little
tall
square
boys.
things. And we had a dot matrix printer that made terrible noise.
Oh, I remember those image writers.
Yeah, they were unbelievable. Yeah, exactly. And the programs were different. We had Freehand and Quark Express.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the ones I learned on. But, after a while, it becomes pretty intuitive. I think nobody really knows every program perfectly because there's so many tricks.
Yeah, and I mean
Yeah.
like that too.
Yeah.
Like they don't last forever. I think
No,
there's this sense
built-in
sometimes that
obsolescence.
students
Yeah.
have where they're like, "Teach me the software." Well,
It's not about the
you're not going to be
software.
using the software your whole career.
Well, that's the thing I try and tell my students. It's not about the tools.
Yeah.
It's not about the pencil, or it's about what you do with it.
You can
So
you can
and
just
your
go
thinking.
watch a YouTube tutorial. You're here to learn how to
Exactly.
think about solving a problem.
Totally. Now you can Google anything.
Yeah.
It's great. So I've been very lucky I've had this career that I've seen, like, the beginnings of things. It's kinda cool.
So you're getting out of school,
Yeah.
and did you have any like work lined up?
Well, actually, at the time, one of my instructors, he had some connections at the Hudson's Bay Company,
A big deal up
which
here.
was really yeah, and he got me an interview, and he said, "You know what? They really are looking for someone right now, and if they offer you a job, for God's sake, take it. I will sort out your courses so that you can pass." So oddly
It's a
enough,
good
my 4th
teacher.
year this was at I was at Emily Carr at that time, which back then was Vancouver School of Art, because I did 1st and 2nd year at Cap, and then 3rd and 4th at Vancouver School of Art.
Hmm.
It was a very small class, there were only 7 of us in the
Oh
class,
wow.
and only one other woman, and she was also Croatian, so we had fun. So he lined up this interview for me, and they offered me a job, and they actually held the job for me all summer because I went to Europe after graduation with my mom, and then came back and had a job lined up. But what got me in were, and this was great advice from my instructor. He said, "Don't spend time polishing a turd." He said, like, make this all about the thinking process. And so I had all these marker comps of like I came up with this idea of what can you do with a finger. So I did all these creative little sketches of what you can do with a finger, but really crazy things. A finger with butterfly wings, a finger uh, I don't even remember as a worm or whatever, like just all sorts of crazy nutty things. And that got
These
me
are
the
like
job.
iconographic kind of
Well, they
fingers?
were just it was all done with markers. It was hand
Oh
done,
wow.
and I just glued them all on a couple of pages in my portfolio, and I think that's what got me the job because they were so impressed with my marker comp skills. Because back then,
Yeah.
when you were art directing photography and they had an in-house studio, I would have to sketch out how I wanted something shot, what the angle is, what kind of lighting. You'd have to specify all the lighting,
Oh
and you'd
wow.
have to also indicate the type, which means you have to hand letter the type, and you indicated body copy with lines,
Yeah.
and then you write the leading. You would say it's 12 on 14, and then we'd have typesetters who would actually print out galleys of type, and that they would be cut out and put through a waxing machine, and then that would be assembled by, paste up artists. And the paste up artists were a couple of very ancient ladies that were chain smokers, and they sat in the back and pasted
everything
up things.
everything that came out of them had a little tinge to it,
Yeah,
maybe.
totally, and sometimes, we'd ship the ad to the newspapers, and once, actually, the logo fell off
Oh, good.
the Baylor. So
That's not important.
but you know what? Everyone knew because the Bay we had a distinctive look and typeface and, graphic standards, and
Yeah.
so it was okay.
It's kind of the big
Yeah,
name
oh,
up
totally.
here.
And another really crazy flub, actually, that I remember back then was, there was something called the Lake City Warehouse, and one of the paste-up artists and the typesetter, I think she was leaving or something, changed it to the Lake City Whorehouse. Just changed one word, and it ran like that.
Oh,
So
okay. No
so
problems there.
some weird things sometimes happen.
Somebody's not getting a recommendation letter.
No, that's
Oh
right.
boy. Uh, kids, don't quit your jobs like that. That's not a good energy to
No.
go out on. There will
Mhm.
be problems.
Yeah.
Let's say. You're at the Bay. It's opening you up to this world of kind of like designing for department stores, designing for
Yeah, art
retail.
direction.
Yeah, like I mean, it's also like a pretty big thing to step directly into the
Oh,
role
yeah.
of art director.
Well, honestly, within a few years, I was, like, the senior person there because people had
Wow.
left, and then, they took I was there for 5 years. They took the advertising department national, so they went back east, and they closed down our department. But I
Oh.
loved working there. Like we were on the 5th floor of the flagship building here, and the pet department was next door. They had one, and sometimes we'd get birds flying into our office that
Oh.
escaped. And it was fun. It was really fun.
Talk about a great office, like
Yeah.
surprise bird day. Although I
Mhm.
could also see how that would be a very bad day also.
Yeah, no, for
I'm
sure.
just doing some very precise work. Oh God, birds.
Yeah.
So you've been in this role, like this leadership role at the Bay for a while. What was your next step? Where did you go after that?
Actually, it was 1986, and Expo was coming to Vancouver. So a friend of
Oh.
mine, he had a Volkswagen minibus, and we thought, if I don't get a job, let's start a little tour company and take tourists around. But within about a month, I had a job. What I did is I actually sent out a lot of resumes. And I actually phoned up Woodward's first, and they told me, the receptionist told me that they're not looking for anyone.
And Woodward's
But
is like it was a big
it was
department
a
store
big
chain.
department store in Western Canada.
Yeah.
So what I did, I thought, I'm still going to drop off a resume package anyway. And it goes to show that you should never listen to the receptionist.
Oh, and also
They
like,
don't know. Yeah.
sometimes places will list jobs, but they will also
Yeah.
have jobs that are,
Yeah.
created for you. So like,
Totally, yeah.
and I feel like that's almost the more common scenario.
Exactly. So, needless to say, I got a call back. I was there for a longer time because we had some weird things happen there. They were going to close down the in-house department because Parma Jarvis, now DDB, they got the account. Because I was actually literally hired by not Woodwards, I was hired by Foster Young Ross Anthony and Associates, who were an ad agency at the time. So we were working in-house, but being on their payroll.
Oh, okay.
It was a really strange setup. And then
Yeah.
they had lost the account and PJ got it. But in the time in between, because they needed to keep pumping out ads, one of the guys in accounting decided to take on the payroll himself. So he
Oh.
started his own company. I know,
Okay.
because he wanted to keep us going. I think probably the Woodward family had something to do with it too. So we were coasting like that for about a year. And then when DDB, or Parma Jarvis at the time, got the account, I had to go and be interviewed again to work there. And luckily, I got in. So I was working there. And
You're
then
kind of interviewing to get the job that you already have.
yeah, exactly. And then, but not only once, it happened again.
Oh God, no.
Oh yeah. So PG had it for a while and they won awards even for some of the ads and everything. And then they decided to take it back in-house. So now here I am again.
Oh, we realize we're losing a lot of money doing this.
it was-
Whoops.
No, it was crazy. So then I had to be re-interviewed again at Woodward's by a different person to get my job back. So I don't even know how many years it took, but it was, I was at Woodward's till 1993 when
Wow.
they closed down. And I
That's
was probably the last Woodward's employee in the downtown flagship store.
yeah. I heard before the show we were talking about that. Like you kind of shut out the lights at the.
Oh yeah, and boy did we have fun. It
Woodward's.
was me and another one of my best friends, Nigel Young, who was also a partner at Hangar 18 in the early days and was with me for 15 years. We were running our own little Vida and Nigel Creative out of the Woodward's building, and the Bay had bought Woodward's and they converted it later to other stores. So the guys from the Bay were there, and we were working next door and doing our own thing, loving it, and working for all the ad agencies in town as Vida and Nigel Creative. We were winning all kinds of awards as just the two of us. And that's how I met my now life partner, Dean Ponto, when we were doing freelance at BBDO. But we actually didn't get together till years later, and that's another whole long story I don't want to get into. But it was pretty cool. But Nigel and I are very close friends. I was his best woman at his wedding because I actually
Wow.
introduced him to his wife. I hired her at Woodward's.
Oh.
And when Dean and I got married 4 years ago, Nigel walked me down the aisle.
Oh my gosh.
So we're super close. Like I still have Nigel on the night before his wedding, he gave me a gold locket engraved. Semper Prevalence, Vida, love Nigel. It was always present, So
Oh.
he's definitely, I consider us like Scully and Mulder. Because in fact, we saw them once. They were shooting X-Files on a rainy day.
Oh yeah, because they
Gastown.
shot like the
Yeah.
first like 5 seasons or
Totally.
something up here, right?
Yeah, but the other thing that Nigel and I did, we were working from my apartment for a while. And just to set matters clear, that relationship totally Scully Mulder clean. We're best
The
friends.
events of the X-Files movie did not happen with
No,
you.
those did not happen. But we were so busy doing work for agencies that we hired my sister to go find us a space. I gave her $5 for each space she went to look at.
Is this because Woodward's caught on that you were doing a different business in their business?
No, they
Oh.
didn't care. No,
Oh.
there was no. I kid you not, there were no managers. There was actually 3 of us left in the Woodwards. Me, Nigel wasn't even employed by them anymore.
Wait,
but we were,
so the drawdown was that gradual that it was just
yes. It
I
was
don't know.
me and one other guy who was delivering the ads to the publications.
Huh.
So Richard Lee, his name was Richard Lee. So the 2 of us were the last employees, Richard and I.
Wow.
And then Nigel was working from the building, even though he wasn't really supposed to even be there. But what we used to do, we'd roam around and we found all kinds of cool things between the walls. We found.
Whoa. What?
Well, in the department store, because it's an old building.
Oh, so
and it was like between the actual gyprock of the wall and the outer shell of the building, there was a space. So we were like rats. We were going through all these tunnels. We found all these walking sticks in the nurse's office area.
Oh,
Probably
God.
old people that either croaked there or got taken to.
We're hidden behind another wall.
Oh yeah, we found all sorts of interesting things.
Oh, my God.
So it was a strange time, but a fun time.
I'm glad you didn't get Cask of Amontillado or whatever it is.
God. You read Edgar Allan Poe, I see.
Yeah.
I love that.
I can
I've read that
vaguely
one, too.
pronounce Edgar Allan Poe books.
Yeah. No.
No emails about what the correct pronunciation or spelling is of that book. Cask of
Amontillado.
Amontillado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
but-
the telltale heart myself. Those heartbeat under the floorboards.
I feel like the floor should be a little thicker. The heartbeat should not cause the floor to move.
No.
That's like a structural issue with the building.
Oh, totally.
Get on it wherever it is that book takes place.
Yeah.
London, maybe?
Yeah, no, totally, yeah.
Baltimore?
Oh, actually, I've got another funny side story about the Woodwards building. When all the employees were leaving, we did a wake for Woodwards.
Oh.
So we all wore black, and we were getting a picture taken. We had a group shot taken. And the funny thing is we had left all these candles, but stupidly enough, put the candles in wax cups.
Oh.
And we left
that's
the
not gonna
room,
work.
and then a desk that they were on caught fire. So we had to go there. We got blotters, like desk blotters, and we were trying to put out the fire. We almost burnt the building down.
You gave it a Viking funeral.
Yeah, we did. We certainly
wow.
did.
That's they probably shouldn't have let go of the security guards first. It
No,
sounds like.
they did have security guards, but they weren't really checking much stuff.
Oh,
I gotta tell you.
these are security guards who maybe have turned
the
off the
door.
monitors, turned
Yeah,
them over to a hockey game or something.
I think so. It was pretty funny. Those were fun days.
What kind of work were you doing at Woodward's when it was still a going
Okay.
concern, of course?
Well, a lot of it was art direction. And of course, Woodward's had the regular stuff that went on sale every week, but we had some high-end fashion stuff. We had all sorts of different things that we'd be advertising, and we'd put together these beautiful catalogs for Christmas. And one of my really crazy stories and things that went wrong was the Woodward's Christmas catalog that we wanted to shoot up at Whistler. I came up with this idea of, hey, let's do this very nice emotional thing. We start off with a spread with a dad taking his son out to get a Christmas tree
sure.
on a snowy, beautiful landscape.
Very Christmassy.
Yeah. And one thing you should know is usually the catalog's done in late spring or early summer, and there's not much snow. So that's why I thought, well, maybe this is up in Whistler. So I phoned them, and they said, oh, yeah, there's snow up on the glacier. So we ended up going there. But the thing that they neglected to tell me was, first of all, there was a team doing blasting up there on the other side of the mountain.
I'm sorry, what?
Blasting. They were breaking rocks.
For what?
I don't know what. They were building something. And they also didn't tell me that all the snow that was up there was on vertical surfaces.
Great.
And it had this horrible red moss or mildew or something on it. So it was just the weirdest thing. And the photographer, he ended up taking his 4-wheel drive and blowing out the, what do you call it, axle or something.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it was just a nightmare. So we had to take very limited crew. So there was me, the model that we'd hired to be the father, and the photographer took his nephew because that way he could minimize parents. And there was an assistant. That's 4 of us. So we get up there and then we see there's no snow. We said, okay, well, we can always airbrush it later. And this is before Photoshop. So we thought, we'll get a really good airbrush artist. And
Yeah, I
put
mean,
in all the snow.
it sounds like a big airbrushing job.
It was a big airbrushing job, but I'll get to that. That's another
Oh,
story
no.
in itself. So anyway, we had this tree up, tied to the roof, and we get up there after a big ordeal. And then the kid starts crying. He was like 5 years old. He didn't want to go with the model.
Oh.
And here we had spent all this time and effort and money to get up there. So I thought, how am I going to do this? And I think an important part of being a good creative director is being a good problem solver. So I said to the photographer, I said, Andy, why don't you get into the clothes from the model? And why don't you be the dad? He was a good looking guy. So I thought, you know what? He can take his nephew and pretend he's his dad. And he fit the clothes, luckily. So here we are paying this model for the whole day. And he's out there with a metal detector looking for stuff skiers have lost in the crevices. He's looking for
Wait, so if the photographer's the model, who's taking the photo?
the assistant. The assistant took the
Okay,
photo.
thank
I was out
God.
directing, and the assistant basically took the photo. So the photo turned out great, but of course it was a bunch of barren rock.
Yeah.
The model just had a fun day looking for, stuff that skiers had lost on the slopes. So anyway, after that,
I found a quarter.
exactly,
Okay.
yeah. Hey, a necklace, a watch, whatever. So we went back to the studio, and then I thought, what am I going to do now? I can't show this to anyone. I have to get this retouched. So the photographer made this beautiful print. So I thought I have to find a really good airbrush artist. And apparently there was a new guy in town who was amazing. The only problem was he was from South Africa and he had never seen snow.
Yeah, that's a problem. That is a problem.
Yeah, it was a problem. So he went away, did the airbrushing, and the model was walking on top of the snow. Like they weren't sinking, the feet weren't sinking into the snow. So I had to.
Well, they have
get
the
that.
new hover boots that you can only get at
Right,
Woodward's.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to have that fixed. But in the very end, it came out beautiful. We converted it to sepia tone, and which was forgiving, and it looked lovely. It was a really nice opening spread.
So you couldn't even tell that it wasn't, it was like a
No,
LL Bean ad.
no, yeah, it
Wow.
looked really, really nice. So I'm quite proud of that.
That's incredible. I mean,
Considering
that
the ordeal we went through to get there. It was nuts.
I mean, also like what happened? So the photographer's car is busted up
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
How do you even get a
Well,
busted car down?
we got down. He'd actually, I don't think it was the axle. I think it was the brakes.
That's much
Which
worse.
is, I guess so, especially going downhill.
Yeah, I mean, it goes down good. It's just the
Yeah,
ceasing to go down that's going to be
totally.
the problem
Yeah,
there.
yeah. But something. I don't quote me. It was a long time ago. Something happened to his car. But I think maybe he had some brakes left, but very little. Enough to get us down safely. We didn't die on the way down, so that's all good. So that was, the art direction stuff, but there were a lot of high-end, like fashion. I did lots and lots of fashion with Howard Fry, photographer, and a lot of it we did on location. And sometimes with fashion, you're shooting for the fall in the summer and vice versa.
Yeah.
We will get samples from Asia before the merchandise gets here. And a
Mm.
lot of the samples, as you may not know, are usually very small sizes. So we had this shoot booked and we'd hired a whole crew and photographers and everything. It was going to be at Kitsilano Beach and it was going to be people playing volleyball and jumping up and down the sand. So we get these shorts. I remember they were bright yellow shorts and the model's ass was like twice the size of the shorts. So I thought, how are we going to do this? So we came up with a solution. We cut the shorts in the back and taped them to his ass. And it was the only way to do it. And so this poor guy, he had to look like he was leaping and enjoying himself. So after a while, a crowd started to gather around. They were laughing their heads off. Luckily, it was still photography, so you couldn't hear the laughter. But that was quite the funny shoot. I'll never forget that one.
So these are just, is he like wearing underwear and in the
No,
front?
it was bare ass with masking tape in the back.
Well, yeah, I think that's going to cause a crowd to
Yeah,
gather,
yeah,
to be
yeah. Oh,
sure.
totally. You can
Yeah.
imagine what it looked like from behind. It was just ridiculous. Yeah. So, with these fashion shoots, and this was before digital cameras. So everything was on transparency film.
Oh, yeah.
And I was at the photographer's studio and he gave me a whole roll of transparency film. And it was a $10,000 shoot that we had. And I took a cab back to the office. And I get back to the office. And of course, there's only one copy of these shots. And the flyer had to be put out in a week. I thought, oh my God, I left the transparencies in the cab.
Oh, God.
So you
Are
can
they like
imagine
in a canister or
they were
like?
just a roll. They weren't even in a
Oh,
canister. They
so
were
just
just a
this.
roll that taped together. I thought, oh my God, what am I going
Ugh.
to do? And here I was. I thought, oh crap, I'm going to get into real shit from my boss. This is like 10 grand and no images for the flyer.
Yeah.
So I frantically, with my heart in my throat, was phoning the cab company. And luckily, I was so lucky. They actually found the driver. And, if he had picked up another passenger, the passenger would have sat on them and
Yeah.
squashed them or something.
Oh, God.
So I got them back. And usually in those days, it meant you get all these transparencies and there'd be lots of shots and you'd have to sit there with a little light table and a loop and go through them all and mark them.
Yeah.
So I got really good and fast at editing photography. And then you look for certain things. And you know that people look at flyers, it's a quick emotional response. So I used that. I used my intuitive eye to figure out, hey, this looks natural, it doesn't look too posy. And Howard Fry was an amazing photographer. What I loved about working with him, and he worked a lot in the States for Nordstrom's and the Gap and all kinds of other great companies. He just clicked the shutter at the right moment. And I've worked with
Yeah.
other photographers and they always missed the shot because there's that emotional thing that happens in the models.
It's such a hard thing.
It's a
I
hard thing,
mean,
yeah. There's a lot of nuances that people don't realize that go
yeah.
into fashion photography, like sort of more lifestyle photography, I'd say, because fashion can be very staged and set up. If you do it more like in what I call sort of graphic
Oh,
fashion
yeah,
spreads,
yeah.
and then that's a little easier because you really set up everything.
You're creating this totally an
Yeah,
artificial
totally.
environment that you can control every aspect
Yeah,
of.
yeah. And just so you know, with these flyers, I would sketch everything by marker as to what I'm looking for. So I would show these sketches to the photographer so they knew exactly what we had to do. And we'd have a pre production meeting. We'd figure out the models, we'd figure out any styling, any props, locations, all that stuff at these pre pro meetings, which are very important. But things still go wrong, like things happen. Like the time another very embarrassing story happened. this this was just too funny. We Woodward's would run these full page ads every weekend for usually lingerie, underwear, and bras. And so we get all these sample bras, and the models that we'd booked were all fairly flat chested. And this one bra that was called the Olga bra, it was made for larger and like boobs. And I was so embarrassed, but it was my size. And and this young male photographer was shooting this at the time, and I thought, "Oh my God, how am I gonna do this?" And luckily, my head wouldn't be in the shot because they were just, of course, focused on the bra
Yeah.
part. So I went and I did the shoot, and I just was oh my God, it was just the most humiliating time of my life having to stand in his studio in my bra. And then later, when we got the shots back, I remember the copywriter that was proofing the copy, he goes, "Oh, wow, look at this one." Ooh, ooh." He had no
Oh,
idea it was me.
God, no.
He did not know that it was me, and I kept my mouth shut. It
Ugh.
was just
Yikes.
I know, it was yikes. It was yikes. It was hilarious, though. But the funniest part of this was about a year later, like, first of all, I didn't wanna ever hire this photographer again because I was too embarrassed to look him in the face. It was just too embarrassing.
I mean, I'm sure he's seen all
I'm
kinds
sure,
of
but I was
things.
so naive. I was young and stupid too, and I thought, I just can't bear the embarrassment. I was so humiliated. And then I started dating this guy whose brother had a block party Turns out that photographer lived on that block.
Oh no.
So that was the next time I saw him. And
Did
I
he
was so
remember
embarrassed.
you?
Of course he did. Yeah.
Oh, God.
It was just so embarrassing. It was crazy. So that was the bra fiasco. Yeah, and then the sort of the last and funniest, I think, is of course we'd sometimes do these high-end fashion shoots, and we had this fashion model that I had spec'd, hey, let's make it really elegant and have her walking a greyhound. So I had this all booked and ready to go, and then I got sick, so I couldn't be at the shoot to
Oh.
actually shoot it. And plus, the photographer didn't show me the dog ahead of time.
No. Well, I mean,
So
this
we
is
were
also a
scrambling.
time when like that was a lot harder to do. You can't just
Oh,
text
yeah.
a picture
No,
to somebody.
you can't, no. And so he assured me he had a greyhound booked. So he thought he had a full-size greyhound booked, but the dog that
Mm.
showed up was like the size of a chihuahua. It was like slightly bigger. So here we had this long, tall, lanky woman with this little beast.
Paris Hilton sized dog.
Totally, totally. Even though he had features like a greyhound.
That's
So-
very odd. Okay.
So then the photographer, he said, okay, I'll try something. I'll try blowing up the dog and we can retouch it.
Oh.
So he blew up the dog. It looked like a giant rat. It was just the most hideous thing. So we couldn't have this woman walking a rat.
No, it's a luxury fashion rat. And
Yeah,
all the
Luxury
richest,
fashion.
fanciest people have them now.
Oh, I know. It was
You don't
nuts.
have a luxury rat?
I know. It's ridiculous. So we ended up just cropping the dog out and retouching the leash out too. So we had no choice. The ad was running in a couple of days and we had to improvise with something.
Is her hand like posed in a way like she's holding a leash?
Well,
or
sort of, yeah. But you know what? She
could
looked like a
be-
runway model. I just went with the least weird looking one.
that's probably the best call. I mean,
Yeah.
what can you do? That's-
I know. Yeah, it was nuts. So those are some of the crazy things that can happen, and you have to really think on the spot because you have deadlines to deal with.
Absolutely.
You have to come up with a solution because there's money at stake. There's ad space booked.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff.
Like you're even as an art director, you are constantly trying to negotiate these things with
Yeah.
the client and like trying to figure out like what is it that we can do with the resources
Oh,
that we have.
Totally problem solve. And sometimes, even now we do a lot of real estate work and sometimes we'll do site signage and there'll be things obscuring certain parts of the site. So you have to come up with a way to work around that and make it work.
Yeah.
So things can go wrong, and that's why when you're in school, definitely just you're so lucky when you're in school because you don't have clients breathing down your neck. You can be creative.
Yeah.
You can, if you use your time wisely, you can come up with amazing things and they shouldn't go wrong. Like it's not
Ideally, but
ideally, yeah.
Yeah.
Although sometimes, yeah, for sure.
I if there's a will, there's a way
Oh,
when it comes to
totally,
making
yeah.
mistakes, I've found.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I've kind of oh, and there's one other one I'll share with you.
Oh,
that,
sure.
When
Absolutely.
we used to do this book for housewares called Showcase, and I was doing a cover. We were going to shoot it in the Dinosaur Park in Edmonton, and I got flown out there.
What is the Dinosaur Park?
It's like a theme park,
Oh,
and I
Are
think it was
there-
Edmonton?
like dinosaurs?
Yeah,
Like-
they have these giant dinosaurs like built like these big
Oh,
statues.
thank God. Okay. So
Yeah.
this is
Yeah,
they've
yeah.
learned the lesson of Jurassic
No,
Park.
totally. So I hired an Edmonton photographer who I'd never worked with, and we get to this dinosaur park. But the guy that was supposed to meet us, it didn't meet us on time. So we ended up thinking, "Oh my God, we're going to lose the light. The light's going to go to hell, and we're not going to get our shots." So we thought, well, okay, well, let's break in. So we actually decided to go over the
Okay.
fence. So the photographer boosted me over the fence, and I was wearing these pants, and I ripped my pants over the fence. And I was only in Edmonton for the day. I had to come back on the plane that same evening. So,
after your break-in at the dinosaur
yeah,
park.
totally. But we managed to get in, and we got the shot, and it all went well. But then on the flight home, there was some other people from the agency I was working at on the time on the flight, and here I was with this giant rip in my pants.
Yeah, how big is this rip?
It was a big flap.
Oh. Yeah, that's not an easy sewing kit
No,
fix.
and there was no time to fix it. There was no time to even go out and get a needle and thread. It was crazy. Yeah.
But you got what you needed to get out
Yeah,
of it, and that's
totally.
the
Yeah,
most important part.
exactly. Yeah.
You're at Hangar 18 now, which
Yeah.
you founded.
Yes. Yes.
What is it that Hangar 18 like does? You mentioned like
Well, a
some
lot
real
of
estate
branding.
stuff.
We're right now, one of our main pillars is sustainability and real estate. Those are the two main pillars right now. In the older years, we've been around because we've been around since 1996, and we've had many different types of clients and a lot of branding. We branded YVR back in the 90s.
The airport?
Yeah, the airport. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's quite a big project.
My partner Sean actually designed that logo, but we all worked on it. At one time we had 2,000 dockets open,
Oh
which
my
was
God.
it was crazy.
No.
And the company,
That's awful.
oh, I know it was nuts. We had 22 people working for us, and there
Ooh.
were we had three partners, Sean and Nigel and myself.
Well, that's only 100 projects each.
Yeah,
About.
no, it was great. Those were the really good old days, the 80s, when there was lots of budget and lots of great stuff. We did a lot of work in many different areas,
Yeah.
some mining stuff, annual reports, lots of things. But 2008, the big crash, and then we ended up, having to do a pivot. Companies now there's only 5 of us, which is actually I prefer. You've got more control because that's how we started.
Yeah.
And my new partner, Dean Ponto, both my life partner and my business partner, he and I, we've made a go of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's really fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. And we hire our interns from the CAP Idea program every summer. We've already
Oh.
got one lined up for next year.
So if there's any idea program listeners out there,
Yeah.
get ready for that call.
Yeah. No, next summer is already booked. But
Oh, then don't.
yeah.
Hold your horses then, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. Our students actually who ask me early, they get priorities.
Oh, well, I mean, that's a kind of lesson. It's like
Yeah.
you have to ask.
Oh, yeah. It's
Asking is kind of the secret. People ask, what's the secret to getting into this field? You ask.
You ask. Yeah, absolutely.
Talk
You're
to people.
Totally right. And also the early bird catches the worm. You've got to be on top of it. You
Absolutely.
can't sort of think things are going to fall into your lap. You have to take it. Carpe diem.
Yeah. You got to go out and chase it.
Yeah, you do. You do. And sometimes you're lucky too. You just happen to be at the right place at the right time, which I've been lucky enough to be.
Yeah.
So
Well, but I mean, I think to get where you are, you had to be like really, really talented just from the get go too.
well, you had to work hard too.
Yeah.
You can't underestimate the importance of being a very hard worker. Because even I remember the years at Palma Javis, I used to just put my nose to the grindstone, and that was the only way to really get ahead. And especially in the 80s, being a woman too, 'cause things were a little bit harder for us back then
I mean, there were
in this industry.
definitely
Especially.
a lot fewer women.
Totally.
Like
Think of
in
Mad Men.
advertising and in design.
Oh
Like,
yeah, like Mad Men. It was like the tail years of that era, so it was quite male dominated. But now, thank goodness, things have changed. It's for the better.
if people want to find more about your work, where
Yeah.
can they do it?
H18.com for Hangar 18 Design Continuum. That's probably the best. I'm on LinkedIn. Just look for my name.
You have a very active LinkedIn page from what I saw. Like
Well, it's not as active as it could be. I'm really bad at keeping it up. I don't
LinkedIn
use
is a
Twitter
hard
much.
thing to engage with, I found.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, my Twitter is pretty lame, I gotta say, and so is my Instagram. But you can't do it all. Our Hangar 18 Instagram, I get some of our employees to do that because the odd thing we post there. But my LinkedIn is probably the most active, and I also have to shout out to the RGD and the GDC.
Oh,
They've both
yes.
been great, especially the RGD lately. I've just had so much support from them from Toronto. They put on Design Thinkers, and they've really been wonderful supporters. And
Yeah.
I've been quite involved with them over the last couple of years.
And Design Thinkers is it like an annual kind of design talks festival thing?
Yeah, there's one coming up in Toronto in November, I think it is, or October. I'm not sure. We had just had one this early summer here in Vancouver. A lot of great people come to those.
And if we have any listeners in the States and
Oh,
you
yeah.
want to find out what's going on design wise in Canada, that's probably a great
Yeah.
thing to check out. Well, thank you. Thank you again, Vida, for
Oh,
being on the show.
Thank you, Sean. It's been a real pleasure meeting you.
Oh, it's been a
And
pleasure meeting you too. And also,
Mhm.
hey, listener, thank you to you. That's right. I'm talking to you personally. if you are listening to the show and you like it, maybe you're even hearing it for the first time. Who knows? We're starting off a new season. Could be we get some new listeners. Why not take this opportunity to subscribe to it in whatever podcast player you love? There are so many of them, but it means that if you love podcasts, there's many options for you to listen to this show in. And hey, why not do so from our brand new website, Did I Do That Design? There's a lot of stuff there. In addition to that, you can find some good images that go along with each episode. Did you know that I do that? I do. And you can also find those on Instagram. So yes, this is Did I Do That? And as we always say, in the closing of every episode.
What? Did I do that?
Thanks so much. Okay, bye. No, that's exactly the reaction I wanted. Thank you.
Oh, man. That's great.
Your eyes were so
I know. I have to remember what
I honestly, the part of the gag there is that there is nothing that we say consistently at the end of the show. Thank you.
He might come in.
Yeah, maybe we'll pull him into the show. Have some conversations about.
Yeah, he usually doesn't talk to me. He usually listens to his cell phone. That's the only problem. But maybe he'll.
Oh, he's one of
Yeah. But
I don't have headphones and I don't want headphones.
He's an older guy, so I don't know. I never talked to him, but just warning you in case he.
It's so funny. I had an interaction with one of those guys this morning. I'm staying at UBC in their conference housing, which is really just their dorms.
Yeah.
And the whole time I've been there, it's been like 16-year-olds, like children, loud children.
Yeah.
But I came out of my room this morning. The children are gone. I don't know what happened, but they have been replaced with, I would say, men about 20 years my senior.
Oh, wow.
And I don't.
It's some kind of convention.
Yeah, like it was like, is there like an aging disease? Am I 20 years older than I was last night? But in the bathroom, there was a guy who. Some of this is speculation because I could not see what he had, but what seemed to be playing on his phone was an episode of Mr. Bean. If that's what he
hilarious.
needs, then I guess that's good for him.
That's
But
too funny.
I don't.
Well, maybe it's a convention of a comedy convention or something. Or Mr. Bean lovers or Rowan Atkinson admirers.
Yeah, Rowan's promoting Man versus Bee at UBC.